When I was a kid, my favorite shows were cartoons. I watched a lot of different cartoons when I was young. We had shows like G.I. Joe and Transformers and Thundercats, so on and so forth. They were superheroes and they were supervillains, and they would have these huge, spectacular battles with sweet hardware and cheesy dialogue. They were kind of violent, but they were simple. They were innocent. They were for kids. But when I was about 12, I saw a cartoon that was like no other. It was fast, dark, it was mean, and it was horrific. But this wasn't a cartoon. This was anime. This was Akira. Akira is an animated cyberpunk film that depicts life in a dystopian Tokyo. It's considered by many to be a landmark in both animation and Japanese cinema. When I first saw the film, I thought it was just a violent cartoon. But now that Akira has captivated audiences around the world, I believe it to be a smart, slick, and subversive piece of movie making. So, give me just a few minutes of your time, and let's go back and have a look at Akira. Akira was adapted from a manga comic book written by, give me a second, Katsuhiro Omoto. Katsuhiro, Katsuhiro Otomo. Who cares? Otomo. Manga comics differed from Western comics in the fact that they were more image-driven rather than dialogue-driven. Manga comics often exaggerate their characters' facial features, particularly their eyes and their mouth. Akira was no exception. Panels of the Akira manga show in details the characters' faces. We see the beads of sweat, veins in their body, their muscles twitch. When it came to animating the Akira movie, the comic book's creators oversaw the production of the whole film. One of Akira's many innovations was to complete the voice work of the film before the animation was done. So instead of having just the characters' mouths move while their faces stood still, like previous animes, Akira's voice work and animation work in sync to bring the story to life. The panels of the manga comic always emphasized a sense of motion, and this is what it means to animate something. The animators bring the still photos to life, and they bring a sense of motion and speed to the movie. Look at the city of Tokyo in this scene. Tokyo is a city in motion. It is a city that is moving. And as the story progresses, it'll be a city that is being destroyed. At the heart of Akira's story is the friendship between Kaneda and Tetsuo. Kaneda is like an older brother to the younger and weaker Tetsuo. In an early scene in the film, Tetsuo even tries to operate Kaneda's bigger and more phallic motorcycle, but he is laughed and mocked when he can't. This love and resentment towards Kaneda and his friends will appear later in the film as Tetsuo's powers wreak havoc over the city. So Tetsuo is still a child who is throwing the mother of all temper tantrums. Like a child who has maybe read one too many comic books, Tetsuo turns his rampage against Tokyo into some kind of show. He even dons a would-be superhero costume in the form of a tattered red cape, almost as if he is the superhuman star of his own manga comic. We should remember that the main characters of this movie are mostly teenagers. So Akira does function as a science fiction film, but it also functions as a critique of contemporary Japanese society's attitude towards the young. There are many subplots in the film that depict the failure of government bureaucracies to help the young, and how student protesters and political radicals are attempting to overthrow the corrupt status quo. These references probably wouldn't be lost on a young Japanese audience in the 1980s, but they probably would be lost on American audiences viewing the film. So Tetsuo's rampage against the city is not simply an entertaining spectacle. It's a form of all-out adolescent resistance against the oppressive powers of authority. This is youth unleashing its rage against the old. This is adolescent rebellion, literally tearing down the forces of authority. So in Akira, as the power of authority diminishes, the power of the young grows. In addition to being an entertaining animated science fiction movie, we can also use Akira to tell us something about Japanese culture. Akira contains several references to the atomic bomb. We have to remember Japan is still the only country to experience the apocalypse in the form of an atomic bombing. This might have created a sense of collective victimhood for some. I don't think we in America can truly understand the long-term effects that the atomic bomb had on the culture. But we can look at Japanese film and see how the destruction caused by the atomic bomb has been reenacted in various Japanese films, including Akira. So Tetsuo's destruction of Tokyo is reminiscent of another Japanese science fiction monster, Godzilla. Godzilla was a monster created by the fallout from the atomic bomb, and his movies usually show the destruction of Tokyo. So, like Godzilla, Akira is a way for Japan to relive, remember, and perhaps overcome the traumas caused by atomic destruction. The climax to Akira takes place in Tokyo's National Olympic Stadium. This location is significant because it was also the site of the 1964 Tokyo Olympics. Now, the '64 Olympics became a symbol for Japan's reconstruction and its re-entrance to the global stage after World War II. In Akira, however, the stadium will be the setting for a different kind of reconstruction. Tetsuo's body will undergo a final and horrific metamorphosis that will destroy and perhaps renew Japan once again. Here, all the lines which separated machine from human and male from female are all obliterated, and Tetsuo becomes this pulsating, horrific, monstrous thing. You know, as I look at this scene, all the historic detail I've talked about should not undermine the crazy fun that watching Akira is. This movie is filled with spectacular images of things being destroyed, torn apart, blown up, and obliterated. Akira is a fast, fun, frenzied animated movie.